Welcome to today's webinar, Divide, Conquer, and Grow, How to Share Leadership so that your company grows faster while your operations run more smoothly, efficiently, and profitably. Brought to you by Landscape Management Magazine and our sponsor of the event, Slingshot. I'm Grace Ryback from North Coast Media, and I will be your event manager. Before we get started, I want to let you know that today's webinar will be recorded. You're currently in a listen-only mode. A recording of this webinar will be posted to landscapemanagement.net/webinars and will also be emailed to you tomorrow afternoon. At this time, I'd like to acquaint you with the ways in which you can participate during today's event. Please notice the Q&A panel on the left side of your console. If you have a question, type it in the panel's text box, then click Submit to place your question in queue. We encourage you to ask and enter any questions you may have for our speakers throughout the presentation. We will address these questions at the end of the presentation during a Q&A portion. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's event, you can use the same Q&A panel on your screen to submit your issue, and assistant producer Sarah Peacher or I will personally assist you. You may also learn more about our speakers by viewing their photos, bios, and email addresses in the panel located on the upper left-hand corner of your console. If you're logged into your social media accounts, you can share the webinar's title, description, and URL with your friends or colleagues using the Share This widget. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator, pass the presentation over to him, Landscape Management Editor-in-Chief, Seth Jones.
Thank you, Grace. Hey, welcome everyone. I'm so pleased to be here today. I'm Seth Jones, Editor-in-Chief of Landscape Management Magazine, and I'm pleased to kick off our webinar, Divide, Conquer, and Grow, hosted by Jeffrey Scott. I won't occupy too much of the screen time. There's much more important people here than me who have a lot to talk to us about, so I'm excited to get into the program. But first, just a little bit about me and the magazine. I've been a working journalist in the professional turf industry for more than 20 years. LM just a little over 2 years ago. What an interesting time to be sitting right now. We hope that our magazine, our publication, and our different brands have been valuable to you. I like to brag to people that we consider ourselves the #1 magazine presence in the industry. We have a readership of 86,000 landscaping and lawn care professionals, and we come at you monthly, weekly, and daily between our monthly magazine, which I got the new issue right here. We're very excited this issue just came out. We have a e-newsletter that we send out every week called LM Direct, and we also update our website daily. So we feel like we've got the industry, we're doing our best to cover it. I've got a team in Cleveland who does a great job working hard for us. So we want to be able to serve you as good as we possibly can. And the best thing about it for us is because of our partners like Slingshot, all of this content comes to you for free. You can visit us at landscapemanagement.net to check out the magazine. Hopefully you've already been there. Hopefully you're very familiar with this, but just in case, I wanted to get that out there. So now, speaking of partners, I want to kick it over to our friends at Slingshot who brought this to us today. It's my pleasure to welcome Chris Brazier and Cameron Beecher of Slingshot. Guys?
Hey. Thanks, Seth. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Chris Brazier. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Slingshot. We're going to hear from Cameron a little bit later, but I wanted to quickly say thank you to the Landscape Management team for including us in this and hosting the event, and also allowing us to sponsor. I'm really excited to hear from Jeffrey Scott. We've associated a couple of times now, and I'm really looking forward to these leadership topics. That's usually the ones that I get the most, content from. And if you haven't heard about Slingshot before, we're a 24/7 sales and customer support solution for lawn care, maintenance teams, and pest providers. We like to say we don't get sick on Mondays or take long lunch breaks. But we do support your sales and customer service teams when your phone's are ringing and you're unable to respond. Our team of US-based agents are available 24/7 to help answer and manage those calls. And we also can help manage text, chat, social, and even any of your web lead responses. We're going to have a chance to highlight our services a little bit more at the end of the webinar, so I hope you stay around. And one last item I did want to mention before we get started. We are offering a 60-day free trial for anyone attending today's webinar. And if you'd like to learn about that, reach out to us at getslingshot.com or send us an email at sales@getslingshot, and we'll likely connect you with Cameron or one of our other account executives. So thank you for having us, and we're really excited to hear what everyone has to present on.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. And it's been fun to get to know you guys and to see what you bring to the industry. And I'm excited to learn even more. And that's a generous offer you guys have for our viewers today. But now I want to get on to the star of our program. We're very proud to have Jeff Scott here as our moderator and our host. He has been a longtime columnist with the magazine. I want to give the sound effects for the when Michael Jordan gets introduced, but I know he prefers LeBron James. But that's the way we feel about Jeffrey, having him in the magazine. He's a consultant and coach to lawn and landscape business owners, and he specializes both in profit maximization in the green industry. His expertise is rooted in his personal success, growing his company into a $10 million enterprise. Now he facilitates the Leaders Edge peer group for landscape business owners. You can learn more about him and his program at gettheleadersedge.com. So it's my pleasure to bring on board the guy who's going to be driving the bus for here on out, Jeffrey Scott.
Seth, thank you so much. Thank you, Landscape Management, and the 86,000 companies and people that are reading the magazine. Thank you so much. Chris, it's been great to meet you, and thank you to Slingshot. I've been looking into Slingshot, and wow, what an innovative, real cutting-edge application or product, or really service. I guess it's all three combined, that you're offering the industry. I think you're really on the cutting edge of how business is being done. So I'm looking forward to your presentation here at the end to learn about the details. Real quick about me, I help landscape entrepreneurs to fix, scale, and plan the exit of their business. So you might be in one of those three places where you're feeling overworked and underpaid, and you might feel the need to fix a business, or you figured things out and you want to grow, but you want to grow faster. And so you might need help scaling, or you're at that age or period in your life where you want help planning the exit. So those are the three places where I really focus on helping landscape business owners. And so let's dive right into this topic. Divide, conquer, and grow. Why the topic of that we're going to really dive into, which is about the second in command. Why should you bring on a COO or a number two or a second in command? And growth really happens from a marketing and sales perspective, right? Slingshot is there to help drive that. But how does the company grow, and how does the company manage its growth, and how does a company scale? And that really happens at the top of the organization, where the owner, the president, CEO, sets up the leadership team so that the team can really manage, develop the people, handle the clients, service the clients, and grow the organization. Every company I've ever dealt with that is successful, the owner has a strong number two, and there might be a couple number twos underneath the owner. And it doesn't matter the size, whether you're tiny, 3 people, or you're huge. There's always a number two, a strong number two, and even a strong number three at the top that makes the company so successful. If you look at Apple, right? Apple, Steve Jobs had his number two. We never heard about him until Steve Jobs got sick, and boom, the number two came up, Tim Cook, and started running the business. Ray Kroc, McDonald's, had a very strong number two, helping run his huge business. Colorburst, that's a client of mine in Nashville, and the owner passed away a couple years ago, and the number two has been there right along the entire ride, actually managing and running the business. And, he's now taking over the business and running the business. So these number twos are so critical. Now, what could go wrong when you hire a second in command? Well, plenty could go wrong. We're going to focus mostly on how to do it the right way, but getting the wrong person at any position, right? Getting the wrong person at any position, I have found, is the single most damaging, most costly move or investment or decision that a company can make. Your most costly decision is when you put the wrong person in a position. And the higher up that position, the more costly it is. And so having a false start with a second in command can be disastrous. And so you really want to avoid that. And we'll talk a bit about right fit, wrong fit. Also, you have to make sure that the person you bring in, even if they're effective, do they fit your model? If you look at large companies, corporations, really big companies, you will see that there aren't a lot of second in command COOs. It doesn't seem to work well with these huge corporations, huge models, even though it works extremely well for small, medium-sized enterprises like almost all landscape firms. And so it's interesting when you look at corporate America, doesn't work. And I think it's because it's probably over politicized how they bring in and why they bring in second in commands. Whereas if you're an owner, entrepreneur, you get to make all the decisions. There's no politics. And so it works a lot easier for you. What should you look out for? Well, I brought 3 clients, 3 entrepreneurs to speak with us here today, and they will share with you their own experiences from 3 distinct angles. This is actually going to be very exciting on what their views are. One is a CEO who has a COO or number 2. The second guest speaker has both a COO and he's hired a CEO. So he's the owner and he's brought 2 people in to run his business. And the third is a COO or general manager reporting to an owner of the business. So you're going to get 3 distinct angles here, really highly valuable, what we're about to dive into. And so let me jump in and talk about 7 reasons that you would think about hiring a COO or a general manager. There's just these 7. There aren't really other reasons than this that I have seen. Number 1, and the most important, is execution. The owner realizes, I'm really more of a big picture person. I think we'll hear Nate tell us about that. I'm a visionary, and I can manage the details if I'm forced to, when the business is smaller, but I'm not good at it. Some owners may be terrible at it, but I don't find my joy there. And really, I can do so much more valuable things by having somebody whose their sole job is to focus on execution and making the trains run on time. So far and away, that's the number 1 reason. There are 6 other reasons that I want to talk to you about here. Number 2, a second reason to bring in a second in command is a change agent. Your company might just feel stagnant and stuck, and you really need some help to get the company unstuck. And one of our guest speakers today, George Tucker, I believe you're going to hear from him, that was part of the reason for him bringing in his support people is he needed some change. He needed to break through and create a positive momentum in the culture. So change agent is number 2. Third is complementary skills. You may have a complex business where you're good at the sales and marketing, but you need someone who's good at finance, or you're good at finance, you need someone who's good at sales and marketing, or you're good at one wing of the business, and you need somebody who can bring in a real strength in another wing in the business. And I believe no matter the reason for bringing in a number 2 to help you grow the business, complementary skills is always critical. If you bring in somebody just like yourself, one of you is probably not needed there at all. So always be looking for complementary skills. Number 4, co-leadership, right? You'll see this, I think, more in corporate America, public companies, where there'll be co-CEOs of a sort. And so you see that rarely, but you do see it where they bring somebody in to, be a co-CEO and help them run the business. And so co-leadership of a very complicated business is the 4th reason. The 5th is succession. I want to sell the business. I don't have anyone to sell it to here. for whatever reason, I'm not just going to sell it on the open market. And there's plenty of good reasons, probably the topic of a different webinar. And so I'm going to bring somebody in who will buy the business from me or help me set the business up where I can sell it to an outside party, but there's somebody else running it. So that's the fifth reason. The sixth reason, not a fan of it, but retention of a key player. I'm about to lose a key player, so I promote them to being my COO or second in command. That honestly can backfire unless, they should have been there all along and you're feeling like that's the only way to keep moving forward. Sure, there can be exceptions that I could go along with. Do it for the right reasons, though, where it's going to work out in the long run. And the seventh might be if you're just a young buck, you could be the second generation owner of a business. For whatever reason, you bring in a COO, somebody who's just has maturity and experience. And even though they report to you, they are, in fact, mentoring you. And so that's the seventh reason to bring someone in as a COO or general manager. And so let's talk about the 7 roles of a COO or general manager. The first role that they have is identifying issues, sorting out issues, setting priorities. A good general manager sees all the issues and is sort of juggling them, right? And understanding them all, and then sets priorities on what are we going to do first, second, third. In that sense, a good number 2 will push back on the owner. The owner will say, hey, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here, right? A little bit of chasing squirrels or throwing ideas out. And a good COO will say, well, here's the issues as I see them. Here's the priorities. Let's finish priority number 1, and then we'll get to number 2. But let's stick to this for another 2 weeks, another 2 months, whatever, another year, depends on the size of the issues. And then we'll get to this other idea of yours. So in any event, whether it's filtering your ideas as the owner or just in general dealing with the myriad issues and figuring out what to tackle first and second, third, that's a core role of a good COO, of a good general manager. The second role is alignment. So you have a vision as a company and as an owner, you have existing values. If you've been in business for, even just a couple of years, you have values there. And the older the business, the more those values, the stronger they tend to be in the business. You've got goals you're trying to achieve. You've got compensation systems, how people are set up. And a good number 2 will help get everything in alignment. Take the owner's vision, the company values, the goals that the owner and company have set. They'll understand the compensation plan, and they'll really get that in alignment and get everybody on the same page. And that really helps you speed up, right? When you're pulling in multiple directions, you can't go fast. But when everyone's pulling in the same direction, then you'll go really fast. The third reason, or the third role, and I spoke about this before, is making the trains run on time. This is so core to the general manager or COO's position. And it looks, and it manifests itself in your budget. So setting budgets and hitting budgets is a reflection of the trains running on time and running well. And so it's also reflected in good systems, not overly complex, but good systems to cover all parts of the business so that everybody knows, here's how we do business, here's how we do this job, here's how we go about doing this role, regardless of where it is in the business. And so you can see a good COO by virtue of the budgets versus actuals and by virtue of consistent systems, people following those systems. The fourth role of a COO is the talent hunter, talent developer. Now, a little caveat with this. In some ways, it's everyone's job, right? It's the owner's job. It's the CEO's job. You may have division managers. It's their job to look for talent. But as the COO, you're the gal or guy that where all the parts of the business feed up to you, and you need to keep your eye out and understand where are we going to need talent in this organization to keep it on track, right? Keep the trains on time and on track, and to keep it growing. And so if you don't pay attention to this as the COO, you're going to fail at some point. There's going to be a hiccup that's going to throw you off track, that's going to make your performance look bad. And so you have to, by default, be good at this, keep an eye on this, and do a good job of talent hunter and developer. Number 5, your role is continuous systemic improvement. And this role happens 2 ways, actually. One way is personally, you may get involved in an area of the company. Dale is our 3rd guest speaker. I'm sure if we had enough time with him, he could tell us reams of stories of how he had to dive into a part of the company to help fix it. So a good COO can do that. They're not just the big picture, but they can dive into any division and work effectively and help fix it. So they're doing continuous improvement through their own energies. And the second way they do this is through setting up systems. So continuous improvement of global systems, sales processes, whatever the process is. And that they're doing more with teamwork and working with the team and more proactive in nature, right? Sometimes it's reactive when the COO has to jump in and fix something. Not always, but often that's reactive. And then proactive is the second way they work on system improvement. Number 6, filling leadership gaps. This is the role of the best COO can do that. Caveat, the best COO doesn't have to do that. I know, right? It's a bit of both. But great COOs can, let's say you lose a division, you just lose a division manager, you couldn't help it. And they can jump in and manage until a replacement is brought in. Having said that, a better COO would have built a deeper bench there, have somebody they can promote up so they don't have to jump in. So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth on purpose because you want them to be able to fill leadership gaps temporarily. If it happens long term, that's a problem, and that's a sign of a problem. Lastly, strategic planning and budgeting. And here I have a question mark because not all general managers will be good at this. You may bring in a COO or a general manager where they just haven't graduated to that level yet, where they're understand the budget enough to run the budget. That might still be your job as the owner or CEO. You may want to do the strategic planning and drive that and not them. And so those are higher levels. COOs will do that for sure. It doesn't mean that, I'm talking to the audience here, the 86,000 readership of landscape management. You can do this at any size company. And that's why I have Nate on here. He'll be our first guest speaker, a great example of doing this at a smaller size. And he may still drive some of these issues here. And so it's not one size fits all, but this is what the ideal role would be. And so you know where you're heading to. And with that in mind, Nate, I would like to invite you on for a chat here. Are you there with us?
Hey, Jeffrey, can you hear me?
I hear you great.
Wonderful.
Excellent. So I'm going to introduce Nate. Nate Moses, I've known you for 2 or 3 years now. Owns Precision Landscape Management, Greenville, South Carolina. Company is 10 years old, 35 employees, around 3 million. And so when we met, you were smaller, even obviously. A service mix of design build, about half the company, and then maintenance and fertilization, a quarter each, roughly, rough numbers. Mm-hmm. Nate, and there's a photo of Nate, of course, and of his team. I asked Nate to send me a picture he's proudest of. Why are you proudest of that photo right there, Nate?
Well, I'm proud of that because one of the things that fuels me is just seeing a team grow and develop. And so I'm proud of that photo because that represents the growth that we've done, not just revenue, but also the people we've been able to bring on staff and the people who have been able to grow within the company.
Yeah. So I asked you to speak here specifically, younger gentlemen, smaller business, to show the audience, hey, you can do this, or you can head in this direction at almost any size, really. So tell us, when and why did you hire your COO?
Yeah, it's a great question. I first heard about this idea of hiring a COO when I was at a NALP conference in Louisville several years ago. And this idea of hiring a right-hand person, and I loved that idea because I was tired of carrying all the responsibility by myself, and realized that in order to actually scale a successful business, I was going to have to learn to delegate responsibility at a high level. And so that's where I first got the idea of finding someone to come alongside me as we run this business, and this idea of co-leadership. And that's exactly what it is. One person cannot lead as many people as two people can.
Excellent. And so this gentleman, tell us his history with the business.
Yeah, this gentleman started with a company entry-level job. I mean, we're talking entry-level, very little to no experience. Came in and just was willing to work hard. And that was about 5.5 years ago. And as I think back, one of the things that was unique about him from day one was just his hunger to accept more responsibility, to really own responsibilities, even though he's not an owner. He owns those responsibilities at a level that just is unmatched in the rest of the business.
Excellent. I've found, Nate, that the best COOs, second in commands, ideally, the owner has known them for some time. Obviously, that's not always possible. But in your case, it is. You knew him for a long time, and you promoted him, or he earned his way up the career ladder at your company.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I knew him very casually before starting with the company, not very well, but not a whole lot of context before he came onto the company.
But you knew him for a while before he became the second in command.
Exactly. Yep.
So he's a lot different from you. What are his strengths? What are your strengths?
Yeah, it's funny. I think you have to have enough in common where you can have similar communication, have similar languages, but you don't want somebody who's just like you. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of blind spots. And so this individual is very different from me. He loves tactical planning. He loves executing. And while I may be able to do those things, I don't love them the way that he does. I love big picture thinking. I love strategy. I love thinking about the future, and that means that there's times I'm not very good at the details of the day-to-day, and it takes some self-awareness to be able to say that, because most people don't want to admit their weaknesses or find their weaknesses, but embracing what you're good at and being aware of what you're not good at also offers a lot of freedom. And so if you don't mind repeating the original question, I'll make sure I answer that thoroughly.
You're doing fine here. How has your job, how long has he been in this position, and how has your job changed since you promoted him? Yeah.
He's been in this position now about 2 years. Unofficially, we knew he was doing it really about 2.5, 3 years ago. But 2 years ago, we made it official, gave him the title, rolled it out to the company. Hey, guys, this is now the guy that you're going to go to. And we did communicate it that way because we wanted to free me up to be able to do more big picture thinking, to be able to build some relationships with the community, with other landscapers across the industry. It's one of the things that allowed me to join a peer group and have the time commitments needed to be a part of that. It's allowed me to go out to events and learn more about our industry and the future of our industry, and to really be thinking about the future of the company and how we can make this bigger and better. And so that's the types of things that it's allowed me to do now. I now go on a lot more vacations per year. I'll do anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks of vacation every year, and I can do that with the freedom knowing that he's got it. if he needs anything, he knows how to get in touch with me, but that doesn't happen. He owns it.
Yep. Yeah, you joined my peer group, what is it, a year now or 2 years? How long has it been?
Almost 2 years, yep.
2 years. And were you the smallest when you came in?
Yep. By revenue, the smallest company, yes.
Yeah. And I think it's, for those that are thinking about a peer group, you shouldn't worry too much about size. So when I brought Nate in, Nate's a firecracker and everybody can learn from him and what Nate's doing. And so as more of a sidebar, but don't look at size as quality of ideas, quality of leadership, quality of bank account or balance sheet, right? It's really, people are on a journey. Nate's on a journey. He's going from here to here. And just because his company at this point in time is this size, that's totally independent of the quality of person Nate is and ideas that he brings to our peer group. And so just sort of a sidebar for people obsess a little bit too much about size, right? And so I think your company's a great example of that. And so I put up your org chart so people can see there you are on top and everyone else is connected to somebody else. That is how you're able to go on vacation and focus your time on the future while he focuses on the present. One last question here. How has your company evolved since this change and transformation?
It's a great question, and it's hard to think about all of the ways because I'm not very good at thinking about the past, but there's some really big ones that I can think of, and that is the size of the company. I mean, 2 years ago, we were half the size in terms of employees and revenue. 2 years ago, we didn't have in mind the future, what we know that we're capable of now that we have an organizational chart, the structure in place to continue to scale. And so that's a couple huge areas in which we've evolved. I think we are better at tactical planning. So the day-to-day organization, the day-to-day planning, I think we're better now at strategic planning because I'm able to focus in on those responsibilities a little bit more and then bounce those ideas. I think we're better at clear roles and responsibilities within the organization, taking the time to write out job descriptions and to really have reviews based on those descriptions rather than just go out there and get some work done. And so I would say that those are a few of the biggest ways that we've evolved, and that's where we are today. And like I hinted at, now the future is a lot more clear as far as what responsibilities will be available to those who are up and coming. Excellent.
Listen, you have done an excellent job, Nate. And so you were half the size, about $1.5 million. And so that's a message to everybody out there listening that you don't have to wait till you're 40 million or 20 million or 10 million or whatever is double the size that you are today, right? You can really start to think about it early on. And I think another lesson here, Nate, is you never know unless you really have your eyes open. You may be passing over so much great talent in your company that has the potential to be this kind of leader unless you really have your eyes open and that you're thinking about the future and the big picture. And clearly you are. And so you saw this individual. And I think that happens in a lot of companies, a lot of turnover in our industry and many industries. And so having that, being intentional about seeing potential in your people and tapping into it is something clearly you've done really well. And I think that can be a lesson to everybody listening here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that you need to always be looking for, is always be looking for that potential. It's all over the place in our company, and I love showing that off to others. And I think one of the best things that we can do as business owners is try to really be smart about where we are in the way. And I think that this is just something I'm so thankful for that I caught at a young age in the company, is that I was in the way of some of our growth. And by electing a number two and by looking at the ways that those responsibilities can be delegated, I'm not in the way of the company's growth, which is for me one of the worst things I could think of.
Nate, thank you so much for sharing and participating today.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so with that, I would like to bring on guest number 2, George Tucker. Are you out there, George?
Hello, Jeffrey. Can you hear me?
I do hear you. Can we see you? Nope, there you are. Perfect. So let me introduce you, George. George is the owner of multiple companies here. I'm Land Design Plus, and I think there's recently even a third, and there may even be a fourth company in there. George has a few companies, an excellent entrepreneur. So the original company, Land Design, is 18 years old this month. And he has a maintenance company, separate company, Land Design Plus, which is 9 years old. Recently, he has an irrigation company, separate company. And you also have, for other purposes, you have an equipment company, but that's more for other purposes. So that's 4 companies. Is there a 5th company in there, George?
Yeah, there's a couple more. Real estate company, and then I also have a wholesale plant facility.
Great. See? So many you probably lose track on some days.
Every day.
Every day. Land Design, 90 employees. Revenue this year, $13 million. Service mix is about $10 million in landscape contracting, and mostly commercial, but some residential. $2.5 million of maintenance, and $500,000 of irrigation. George, I've known you for, 3 years now?
Correct. 3 years.
And George was coming to one of my events I was putting on, actually an event around the whole concepts CEO, COO collaboration. And that event, was that the one in Atlanta, I think?
Yes, it was.
And
August,
so you called me.
18, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And you called me up. It was in the winter. And you called me up, and I ended up consulting with you first. And you brought your whole team to my retreat center. And you have made many smart and big decisions since I've met you. And I'm sure you were doing that before I met you. It's just been a pleasure to be helping you and working with you and watching you kind of make these big decisions. So I've invited George on here to speak because not only did he install a COO, actually a part-time COO, which I think is interesting, but he has also installed a CEO. And so George is the owner, but now is not the CEO, not the president, is not running the business at all. And so take us through that briefly. Why did you hire the COO? And then, a year later, I think, decided and found and hired a CEO?
Right. Well, Jeffrey, first off, thanks for having me on here. I'm very humbled to be here and talk to everybody. Well, first off, I met Jeffrey at a program he was having down in Atlanta, and it kind of got me thinking about a leadership and developing a better leadership team within our company. I've kind of always had my hands on almost every aspect of the business. But the problem with that is we had maximized revenue to where I couldn't manage it all. I couldn't oversee it all. So we were stagnant for probably 3 years of growth. And the problem was it kind of fell. It was all pretty much falling on me because I default into doing sales and designing and sales because that's what I really enjoy doing. So, when, decisions would, with personnel, all those things happened, I just really didn't have a good vision of going forward and growing a company. So I decided to bring on Jeffrey Scott and hire him to help us develop a leadership team. And with that, I wanted to bring on a CEO to help with that because I recognized that
COO or CEO?
COO.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I decided to bring on a COO. And it just so happened I knew the gentleman for many, many years. and he wasn't even in the industry at all, but I knew his skill set was perfect for really what I needed. He was an assistant superintendent for our school district that had retired, and he really wasn't looking to go back to work. In fact, he was consulting with me on what he could do in the future, and we kind of talked over probably a 4 or 5 month period. And after I went to Jeffrey Scott's seminar, the things just seemed like it fit together. So, I basically went to him and asked him if he wanted to try to help me to grow our leadership team that I wanted to develop, and him to be a part of it. So that's kind of how that happened.
And so you are another example, by the way, of it's good to have known your COO, vetted them for years, even though you knew them from outside the company and then brought them in. Not everybody can do that, but those make by far the best fits. So even though this is about second in command, now your CEO is your second in command. So, and that happened maybe not 1 year later. What's that?
Yeah. How did that happen, and when did it happen?
Yeah, well, that happened like 2 years later, I think. So tell us, because that's where, like I said, you've been making multiple big decisions. So tell us about that decision.
Well, what happened is the same. It's kind of the same thing. When I brought on the COO, he was outside of the industry. So first thing, he had to get brought up to speed on the industry. And so a lot of the roles he was taking on with resolving issues, whether it's with personnel, with departments, establishing different departments and making sure they're being accountable and they're doing all that, he still had to come to me on a lot of issues. And I still found myself being the CEO, taking a lot of my time and a lot of my effort in managing him, because he needed help. He needed to understand the industry. He needed to know, have instructions on what to do and how could he be most effective, even though he was definitely, he could do everything, but he didn't know what he should do first or second, or, where are our main issues at. So that whole year was very time consuming on my part, because I wanted him to be as effective as he could, but he couldn't be as effective because of me not being able to delegate or spending the time that he needed. So after a year of that, same kind of scenario happened again. Another gentleman I've known for a very long period of time, probably longer than my COO, just outside of the industry also, kind of overseeing a $62 million a year company. Took it from $5 million to $62 million over about a 10-year period of time. And always was kind of my consultant on the side about my business, and I always talked to him. It just came up, he wasn't happy traveling anymore and running and doing what he had to do with that company. He was just kind of tired of it. And his main company was outside of where we live, and one thing led to another. And I was very fortunate, and I was able to bring him on to be a CEO. And you talked about having Jeffrey earlier about complementary skills or being also a little bit different. Both of these two individuals are pretty different than me, in all different kind of ways. This CEO, I think the biggest asset that he had, he's such a good communicator with people. Him coming in, you always worry about that disruption of the company. I just knew him as a great communicator. And the way he can talk to people, and make them understand what we're trying to do or what he's trying to do and why. Where I wouldn't have the time to do that. If I wanted something done, I just asked for it to be done. He has the time to really shape their thinking, the personnel, and shape their thinking, and be able to spend time and tell them why we're doing this, doing that, and made a huge, huge difference. And there was hardly any disruption when he came in. Of course, everybody was nervous and concerned, but as it worked out, it was a great transition for me.
Without giving away, and I didn't even talk to you about this beforehand, but without giving away secrets about what you pay these guys, I just want to say to the audience that the COO was a vice superintendent. Is that right?
He was an assistant superintendent of a school district, but he was primarily in charge of the constructing facilities for the last 20 years. So he has a huge construction background.
Yeah, huge construction background. You're a big construction firm. He was going on retirement, so he didn't need to earn gazillions, and you got him at a price you could afford, but an amazing skill set. The CEO, who wanted to make a change, and he's still, I think, in his earning years. I believe you got him at a salary you could afford, where he got some upside. Can I say that out loud? He just did.
Yeah.
So,
he gets an upside based on our EBITDA. Basically, at the end of the year, we analyze our EBITDA at the end of the year. So he has a base salary, and then he gets a bonus based on our EBITDA.
And so the message I want everyone to take away from that is, if you looked at this gentleman's resume and paper, you would never, ever think you could afford the person, let alone go talk to them. But you never know. You can get creative. You never know why someone changes jobs. And George really got somebody who could take your business to 60 million. And so
correct.
I want people to really have the courage to investigate possibilities. You never know what could happen.
Right. And going back to that, our leadership team, one of the things I found out when we went to the leadership team is how much they wanted to grow the business and how aggressively they wanted to grow the business. And all I looked at, well, how can I take on any more? How can we go to, from $10 million to $20 million? And of course, that's what my wife said too. And she said, there's no way. So I had to look and be willing to convince my wife that if we're going to, the reason we want to grow is not for ourselves. We're very happy and content with our lifestyle and some of our goals we wanted to reach. We achieved that. But our growth now is strictly, it's probably 90% of wanting to give more opportunity to our employees to grow, to better themselves. Of course, we'll be riding their short shirt tails to do it and encouraging them along the way. But I had to take the leap to get the right leaders in place so that can happen, because it was not going to happen with me just overseeing things.
So I have a photo here of the St. Louis Arch. Your company's in St. Louis. You did this landscaping. This is your photo. And so, this is a company that does some serious work. George is a serious entrepreneur. And like Nate before, George realized, I like to just go out and sell and design and do work. I've worked hard enough growing the business. Let me bring in somebody with a much bigger skill set. And that's what you've done. And it's been exciting to watch.
Very much so,
George. I want to thank you for your time here, for sharing your experience and just taking time to come online here with us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Our last guest here is Dale Dreyer. Dale, are you there?
I am.
Excellent. So, Dale, I've known you, I guess, the longest out of the three guests. I've known you and your company. Dale is the general manager. Bob Drost, and there he is, both of you guys on the cover of Landscape Management magazine. That was 3 years ago? Your company now is in the $10 to $15 million range. When I met you, you were like around 5 or 6, somewhere around there. You're 60% design build, 20% maintenance, 12% tree service, 8% everything else. Dale, you've been there entire time. Give us a 60-second history of you with Drost Landscape.
Yeah, so from my beginning was in 97. And so of the 30, we're going on 30 years next year, 25 of that has been closely related to the Drost family and the team that we have here. So, I started off simply as a laborer coming out of college and then working my way up. It always seemed to be, there was always one more thing that I could do to help out the organization grow. And when I started, it was 25 employees, and our peak this year was 106. So quite a transformation from when I started to where we are here today.
What Bob is the owner. Was it Bob asking, hey, can you do this, Dale? And you're just like, yep. Or was it you saying, hey, let me grab that from you?
Oh, yeah. Starting off in the business, I was essentially a single parent, and I was always asking, what more can I do to, starting off, it was just what can I do as a laborer to prepare for the next day. Then as I developed into a crew leader, I was loading for the night before so that we could be out and onto a job the next day quicker. And it just kept evolving. It was design work, probably the second, third of my career at Drost was working in the design department and then running crews on top of it. And I think just over time, the skill set and my abilities just allowed more and more opportunities, whether it was bidding and estimating or managing crews. So it's just evolved. And I think that Nate and George both indicated that it's the key people that you have. You got to watch out to make sure that they're always challenged and always allowed to do more things within the organization. And Bob provided that opportunity. He's definitely, if you look at comments that were made by both George and Nate, Bob is clearly a visionary. He's got more things in his quiver than I, as an implementer or a person who likes to get things done, could possibly conceive of. So that partnership, you'll see over and over again when you're talking about, a good second person running your business for you.
When I first met you, Dale, you picked me up from the airport. You and and Bob and your team decided to hire me to help you with the business, right? To help sort of get it unstuck and get to the next level. And then when I came on board, I kind of realized, well, Dale is the number two already, but the owner didn't recognize you at it or didn't delegate enough to you. And so, we did a lot of work, but I think part of it was helping him realize, hey, the solution's right here. We have to delegate and let go to him. And then I remember you calling me up, like, I don't know if I should say this on the air. I don't think Bob will mind, but you called me up like a month later. You're like, I don't know if it's working. You probably was a more serious conversation than that. And then I called Bob up and we got in a three-way. And then I think at that point, okay, things started picking up speed in the right direction. And now look, you have a lot of direct reports there, Dale. That's a lot of people. How do you juggle all that as the second in command?
Yeah. So as everybody's looking at the org chart for just my direct reports, so in the process as Drost evolved, this isn't the first template. It was a juggling act early on. I don't know if Jeffrey remembers this, but after the first year, we lost 25% of our staff because it wasn't a culture fit. And so we slowly worked our way to developing a good core group of people. There's a lot of things that we did as a group to better understand how the business should be run. There's no perfect template out there to design a business around. I can go on and on about the things that we've tried and failed at, and it took years to get to this point. Jeffrey mentioned 2014 is when we hired him, and we wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't done that. So to build that team around you, my responsibilities to these individuals are balanced by what they bring to me as well. I have an accountability team, so each member of that group meets weekly to kind of cover some financial key points, dashboards, call it. And then we also meet quarterly to look at the big picture items. That's most times off-site. And then I meet with each department. So it's the key manager plus their direct reports, excluding team members. And again, it's all about keeping the information flowing both directions, whether it's the maintenance department reporting to me, their key indicators, or me going back to them to ask questions why their key indicators are what they are. So it's a balancing act, and I think that's why it is a success for Dross, is because there's that give and take where everybody's holding each other accountable. And it's not a perfect system, but I think there's a lot of respect in both directions. So that's what's making it successful.
Yeah. It's interesting that first year where you lost 25% of your staff, you still grew, and your profitability still increased, I think, greatly in that first year. So it sounds scary when you shed those employees, but those kind of employees hide in the chaos, right? And so we just, through the moves and changes we made, it kind of shines a big spotlight, makes things very bright and clear. And I think it's a normal process to lose those employees, really, for any company
correct.
that goes through that.
Yeah, correct. And I think looking under the hood, so to speak, and finding out where our inefficiencies were, where we were, we had an an office manager on staff at the time Jeffrey came on board, and she used the term, we don't just bleed money, we hemorrhage it. So, I think getting under the hood and looking at the things that were costing us money and just dissecting it, creating, Jeffrey and his peer group requires us to have a rolling budget. That was something that I dreamed about moving up in the company, being able to see where everything's going. And so that forced us, that pushed that medicine down real quickly when you have to actually get in and feel the pain and know where it's all coming from. So as a company, as a GM, you have to be able to ask the questions of the owner. What is it your long-term goals are? Jeffrey didn't ask this, but Bob Dross had, what are the things that you want to be able to do or achieve as your company grows? And Bob, like you heard from Nate, he wanted to have more free time. He wanted to take a month off for vacation, wanted to spend time with his wife, who, building the company, he was so invested in it that he didn't have time to, take vacations, do trips. He was just all in. He was making the phone calls. He was working with billing, and it just consumed him. And so part of releasing the responsibilities from an owner's perspective was also delegating the things that I have the authority to do. So there are a few things that I go to him, but I want him just to be aware of it. The day-to-day operations, I think because of our organization, we don't have as many fire drills as some companies do, or prior to 2014, we were far less reactive and more of a strategic type of organization. So
you certainly are. You've done excellent. Because of your leadership, it allows Bob to do real estate development, focus on acquisitions where you also get involved. And so the company is still growing in Bob's set of companies, right? His whole portfolio is growing. And you guys have done an excellent job of steering through whatever's hitting you and coming out, making money, and keep growing. Dale, we could keep talking to you for another hour, but we have a time constraint. So I want to thank you so much for your time, for coming on here today.
You're welcome. Thank you. And again, just one more snippet. Knowing that I was going to do this, I talked to Bob, and there's absolutely no regrets for hiring a consultant like Jeffrey Scott to look at our company. There's no way in my peace of mind I would ever have guessed that we'd be where we are today. Could we have gotten there eventually? Maybe, but it certainly has helped to be part of a peer group and have somebody with a wealth of knowledge to support you. So again, just a snippet out there to what you've done for us, Jeffrey. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well, Dave. It's been, Dale, it's an honor working with both of you. So feeling is mutual. I know I'm going over on time here a bit, which to keep us on track. So I'm just going to take another minute or two, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Chris. I have this accountability agreement. I'm going to email this out to everybody who's registered because I won't be able to really get through this. And I was going to do that anyways, really. The accountability agreement states what the owner does for the second in command and what the second in command does for the owner. And I have developed a sort of like an assessment, a very simple assessment where you can rate how well you do at supporting the other person and how well they do at supporting you. And it's really 6 questions with the score on how well the CEO supports the number 2 and how well the number 2 supports the CEO. And even if you don't have an actual CEO, Dale, you might have to put it on mute there. Even if you don't have an actual COO and you have just a division manager, right? You can do this with them, with anybody that's your direct report. So I will put this together and we'll email it out to you so you can understand what it means to have that supportive mutual relationship. And then you can score yourself and your either boss or subordinate, and then you can have a conversation around that. So I will send that out to you. One last thing before I turn it back over to Chris. These are just some free resources for you. I'm a big believer in learning, education, so I try to provide as much free as I can to the industry. If you're not on my weekly newsletter, you can go to my website, jeffreyscott.biz, and sign up for that. I've started a podcast where I'm interviewing really the best of the best in our industry. And if you go to the Ultimate Landscape CEO on whatever podcast platform you use, you can pull that up. My book, Destination Company, which is this one right here, I've decided to give it away for free. And so you can now download it and get it by digitally if you go to jeffreyscott.biz/free book. And actually, tomorrow I'm going to announce that I'll be giving away the Audible for free as well through my podcast. So if you go to my podcast, you can go and you're gonna be able to listen to the chapters of the book there for free. So thank you so much, Landscape Management, for putting this on, and Slingshot. And Chris, I'm handing the baton back over to you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I actually find it very interesting. I should be doing some of this like accountability assessments with those that I work with of what you're going to do for me, what I'm going to do for you. That sounds great. I want to get my hands on that as well. So I'm actually going to turn the time over to Cameron, our senior account executive is at Slingshot. He's been with Slingshot for 4 or 5 years, worked with a lot of lawn care, maintenance, and landscaping teams. So I'm going to let him present on Slingshot. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about what Slingshot can do for the industry as we're getting more and more integrated with lawn and landscape companies. We're very excited about the direction that we're headed here. So to give you a background on Slingshot, we're lawn sales experts. So all we do is lawn, landscape, and pest control companies. So we understand the industry super well. If you're looking for just a generic, cheap answering service, that's not us. We specialize with lawn and landscape companies. So anytime that you're busy or it's after hours, we can actually schedule appointments on your behalf. Or if it's fertilization, we can actually quote over the phone. And because we are so integrated, then we have the ability to do one-call resolution. So we're not taking for doctors or lawyers. It's just lawn and landscape companies. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit more today. These are some of the companies that work with us. If you can see the screen here, we work with top 100 size companies all the way down to one-man bands because we're a lot more affordable than hiring a secretary. And the main reason and why we got in the industry is we've seen that nowadays people are pretty impatient. And we took 1 million calls last year plus, and we've seen that anywhere from 20 to 25% of your total opportunities are occurring outside of normal business hours. And when it comes to Slingshot, we want to be able to help companies just like yourself that anytime that you can't answer the phone, whether that's during business hours or outside of normal business hours, only about 1 in 5 callers are willing to leave a voicemail. And we want to make sure that they get in touch with your company and they're not running off to the competition there. And I don't know if you've ever Googled, lawn care near me or landscapers near me, but it's a very red, hey, we're closed or hey, we're open. And so a lot of companies, when they plug Slingshot in, they update their hours to show 24/7 availability. And it helps you stand out from the competition as you're looking to scale and grow. With a number of, of the topics that we discussed today, we would love to be a part of your growth strategy. And being able to advertise 24/7 definitely helps you stand out from the competition there. And then another piece of what we do is, of course, phone calls are super important, but we are multi-channel. So live chat is a huge piece of what we do. We can throw a live web chat on your website, answer some basic questions, instantly engage customers. As you can see on the slide here, 50% of all visitors and traffic on your website are potential first-time callers. And this is a company here, Royal Greens, where we've thrown web chat on their site, instantly engage potential visitors on the website there, and just another chain of communication. The next piece is email response. So contact forms. I'm sure that you've seen that whether someone's looking for a design request, irrigation, if they're looking for a quote for fertilization, whatever your company specializes in, these can be golden. They've given you their information. They've said, hey, contact me. And we've seen that only about 1 in 3 businesses are responding quick enough. And with Slingshot, we do respond in 5 minutes or less. So we'll answer on your behalf, have a great first impression. And many times, we have a saying around here, the first one there wins. And with Slingshot, we would love to help you with that instant response, instant engagement on whatever channel. The last one that we help out with is texting. That's becoming increasingly popular. Text is a channel that's growing every year. We can convert your existing phone numbers and help out with the texting portion as well. And again, this is why we got in the industry, is we've seen that, it's hard to answer every single call, every single email, every single web chat. So anywhere where you see an issue, whether that's long hold times during the day, limited contact windows, if you're just answering 9 to 5, there's a good chunk that come outside of those hours. And we would love to help with that. So we can help out with, overflow during the busy season. I mean, I'm sure that I could talk to each and every one of you, but Mondays, they get pretty busy. I'm sure none of you have had a crazy busy Monday, but we'd love to help out. So after 20 seconds of being on hold, they can automatically roll over to us. We can answer on your behalf, schedule appointments, sell services over the phone, collect payment information. We do go through the whole 9 yards. And then when it comes to the after hours piece, we can be there. And this is kind of it in a nutshell. An email, a chat, a text message, a phone call comes in, we convert it, give it back to you. And instead of checking voicemails in the morning, basically all that you have to do is service the account. So we do have a multi-channel inbox. It's a great software piece to our business where we can help centralize your communications into one platform. So text messaging, emails, and the chats. And the great thing about us is, again, we can give you the software away for free. You can use it internally. And then if you want us to be a backup or support on any one of those channels, we can definitely help out there. And the last slide is, with Slingshot, Chris mentioned this earlier, we are giving away a 60-day trial. We're trying to put our money where our mouth is, and we're saying, hey, test us out, turn us on for 24/7. If you want some help with irrigation emergencies in the evenings, you want some emergency dispatch, we can have some escalated notifications for some sort of emergencies. And then also, just 24/7 advertising, being able to convert customers, respond to them in multiple channels is the way that things are going. And we do pay for ourselves pretty quickly. We've seen that, residential sales and even commercial sales can be up 40% just by plugging us in, getting to every single lead, every single channel, every single time. So I would love to connect with with you. If you want some more information, this is my direct line. My email is Cameron@getslingshot.com, or you can email sales@getslingshot.com. Here's our website below. We'd love to help lawn and landscape professionals such as yourselves kind of adapt to the modern marketplace and offer some 24/7 availability to your customers. And with that, I can pass it back over.
All right. Thank you, Cameron. Hey, what a great discussion, guys. Thank you to all of our panelists and to Jeffrey and to Slingshot. This has just been a great hour of content. And I got to tell you guys, I've got a ton of questions that have come in. So I'm going to open it up for a little bit of Q&A. Keep in mind that if you have a question right now, I can't promise that we'll get to it, but we do have a Q&A tab. Right now I'm staring down almost 70 plus questions. So we will have contact information for our people afterwards. So if people want to reach out personally, they can always do that too. So first, Jeff, I'm going to go back to you. I've got a question here that says, it's pretty simple, and it really applies to what you guys have been talking about. And it says, what do you do when you do name your number two? What's the best way to comfortably keep tabs on this person because the job has changed and now, they don't want to be getting up in someone's business right away? Is there a way to that you would recommend keeping tabs on the person in the new position to know that they're doing a good job but not overbearing on them as well?
Absolutely. It's the old adage, inspect what you expect, but in this case, you don't dive into inspect. You have a debrief. And so a weekly one-on-one. And I spoke about it briefly with the accountability agreement. You should have an agreement in place with you and the number two, what the number two should be delivering in their position. And clearly there's going to be a set of metrics, measurables, financials, and other numbers that you're going to be monitoring to make sure that the sales and financial health is performing correctly. And then you're going to have other things that are unique to your business and your strength and that person's strength, and or other initiatives that they're working on that you're going to want them to report on, or you're going to have just a few recurring types of questions that you're going to want them to report on. So absolutely key is the set of metrics that you will agree on. How will we measure success? And then it will depend on your unique relationship and then the initiatives and the growth strategies of your particular business.
Okay, fantastic. Dale, do you have anything you want to add to that one? I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think Jeffrey covered a lot of the details. For Bobby's not a numbers person, so a lot of our conversations are just reassuring conversations about the finances of the company and how it's going. But there are times when the doors have to be shut and we have to do offsite conversations because it's high level and we want it to be private. So for us, we do that as often as we can. Right now it's weekly, but sometimes there's a couple of instances where we have to have more than one per week. So it's setting the time aside. Usually it's Fridays, less chaotic with the business, and it allows us that time. So.
Can I want to jump in and say something about Dale. So with Dale and Bob really trusts Dale. Bob's less of the numbers guy. Dale, interestingly, is more. And so the other answer to this question is you better have a number two that doesn't try to hide anything from you and is willing to be completely transparent and open. And if you don't have that, you can definitely lead into trouble.
Okay, great. Nate, I got a question that I think would be good for you. And I'm not going to name names on who sent these questions in because I don't know. Don't necessarily want to put someone on the spot. So this question came in, Nate, and it says, mine is a family startup company. What are some of the things I can put in place right now to prepare for handing over responsibilities to my second in line when I get one?
Yeah, good question. I think a couple of the biggest things you should do up front are create a clear organizational chart and then create from that clear job descriptions. And in that's going to be your tools to really delegate responsibilities and make it clear who's responsible for what.
Okay, good advice. Jeffrey, anything you want to add to that one?
So I was reading question 3 while you were asking question 2. Was this question about the family business?
So question, yeah, this small family startup business, well, what are the things that they can do right now in order to prepare for the moment when they do get to bring on a number 2?
So the question is, is it family that becomes a number 2, or is it somebody from the outside or another employee? And you've got to have an honest conversation with yourself on what that's going to be. Some family members only want to give it to another family member, but that greatly limits the choices because they say the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree, but sometimes it's not an acorn. It's something else that falls off the tree. Kids are not always of the same makeup as their parents. And so kids don't always make the best general managers and COOs. And so your ability to include them on everything as a family member or a potential future owner, but also being realistic with them that it's not a given that they'll be the actual next person in charge unless they can show those abilities and responsibilities as they work in the business.
Okay, fantastic. I have another question here that's very timely, so I feel like I should get it in. It says, with the current pandemic and in general, a lack of horticultural trained labor crew leaders, how do you grow to another level, relinquish or pass responsibilities on to others? So, obviously a pandemic, it would feel weird not to bring this in somehow. Nate, would you like to touch on this one?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to address that. I know that the pandemic has it had all kinds of effects on everybody in their businesses, but I really think that in general, our industry has had a hard time finding qualified labor over the last several years. I don't think that's just this year. And so I really think it's our responsibility as business owners or business executives, depending on your role in the company, to create, well, like I said earlier, clear job responsibilities. And then you need to really have a training program in place, whether that's something that you do in-house, whether you use a third-party provider to assist that. You can't expect to find and just hire people who are trained at a high level. You need to have that built into your company as something that can help your employees grow with the company.
Okay, good stuff there, Nate. I got a hot, or you know what? I think Jeff's raising his hand. Jeffrey, do you want to also touch on that one?
I think it's important to think of your business as a school. The only way you're going to scale is by developing a culture and systems of training and developing your employees. You are not running a landscape business. You're running a landscape school. And so you have to develop, and this is probably the most common problem that everyone really is dealing with besides recruiting is, how do I have time to train? And so you have to have the culture, the systems, and the people that are good at training, not everybody is, in your company, and think of yourself as a school, right, or as a university. And you're really taking people up and building them up. I think it's, in some cultures, it's hard for a foreman to want to let go of somebody. I just trained them all year, and I don't want to let them go to start their own crew. And so here's a little idea to think about. A tip is incentivize them to train and spin off a lead hand to become a foreman of another crew. You might even pay them for each successful spin-off they do, because it's hard work and it takes away from their fun, maybe their bonus from their efficiency and productivity and joy. So you have to address this holistically. You have to have people that are good at training, and you can even learn how to train the trainer to teach them how to train. And you have to have, there has to be some incentive in it for people. So those are some things and tips to help you with that.
Okay, fantastic. Guys, this is my last question, and if you're okay with it, I'd like to ask it to everyone. I think this is a hot button question, but maybe it could be a little bit fun too. Jeffrey, I'm going to start with you. what advice do you have with people who are considering adding their number two, and it's their spouse that would be the number two at the company? Jeffrey, go ahead.
I think we should let George go first because he has his number two with him in the company, and it's been a real issue that he's been working with. George, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Jeffrey. Yeah, my number two's for 36 years now that she's been my number two, because she started with me when I started the business, when I started in this industry, I guess you'd say. So she's been the key to my success, though, but she's also been 100% supportive. So I have brought on other family members, and sometimes it hasn't worked very good. But I will say, they have to. Sometimes my problem with family members is if you bring in family members, they shouldn't be treated any different than any other employee. They have to be productive and be responsible for their job or their task they're doing. And sometimes family seems to get away from that. And I haven't had that experience with my wife. Actually, she's overworks herself, but a lot of times there's a sense of being a family member of a sense of entitlement. So be careful of that, because then when it comes down to business, they don't like the results if you have to critique them on the business side of things, and it's not always easy. So I don't know if that answers the question at all, but
I think so, George. Great answer. We appreciate that.
Want me to give you,
Dale, do you have any? You want me to kick it over to Dale? Feedback you want to throw in on that?
Well, I come into the discussion as a GM, and there's dynamics when you have family members part of the business. Bob has two sons that are in the business. They have roles and responsibilities as project managers in our construction department, and admittedly, there are mixed feelings when it comes to how second generations are managed. And thankfully, they have a department manager that oversees their role. Bob doesn't have direct involvement. I'm sure that there's conversations that go between Bob and his sons on a daily basis, but for our organization, that separation is held by our construction manager with how that system works and how they're treated, and it's fair. So.
Okay, well put. Nate, do you have any feedback on this one? Any opinions, advice?
Yeah, I've got two thoughts that go with this. The first one is I tend to be kind of a direct person, so I'll say it this way. I think it's a really unique situation where that can be successful. I don't think this is the spouse being a number two. I don't think that's a model that you want to shoot for, though I'd be wrong to say that it's never worked, right? Because there are some relationships where it can work really, really well. But as you guys have mentioned, it can be very difficult with family. So that's the first thought. The second thought is, if the people in your organization only see at the top of the organization the same last name, they see that as a roadblock to their own growth within your company. And so I would not recommend it unless it was the perfect fit.
Okay. Well said. Good advice. Jeffrey, I'm gonna bring it to you now. And what do you think?
So 1 + 1 can equal 3, or it can equal 1.5. And what Nate was talking about is really where it can equal 1.5 and really destroy value in the company. There are situations, though, where 1 + 1 = 3 because of the innate trust that allows you to divide and conquer, right? And really grow the business I think there's two issues there. Should I bring a spouse in as my number two, and should I bring them in at all? And, they're just sort of degrees of that question. And obviously, if you don't have 1 + 1 = 3, where your personal relationship works well and well enough, and the business, the roles are super clear, and and at work, everybody behaves as in a business-like fashion, and both husband and wife, assuming, or both spouses, they're both seen as adding value and really lifting everybody else up. Think of the upside-down org chart. In those unique situations, it can work, and look how far it's taken George. But his wife wasn't number two. Operationally, she was managing all the money. And that, I think, kept George in line. And so I think there's these other type of seconds in command, like CFO, where it could work brilliantly and take you pretty far. But just because you can trust them doesn't mean it's necessarily good for business.
Okay, good food for thought. A lot of interesting things here, guys. I've been taking some notes. I feel like we got some good content for the next issue of the magazine as well. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for your time and your support of our magazine, of Landscape Management. And I'm going to kick it over back to our producer, Grace Ryback. Grace?
All right. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, everyone. Jeffrey, everything that you've provided us with today has been fantastic, and I know we'll all be digesting it, and our friends at Slingshot, everyone who participated, we appreciate it, and we want to give a huge thanks to our audience for attending today's webinar, Divide, Conquer, and Grow, hosted by Jeffrey Scott, brought to you by Landscape Management and our partner, Slingshot. If you have any additional questions for our speakers, you can reach out to them directly via the email addresses you see on the slide. And today's presentation slides are also available for you to download via the resources panel. And you'll see a couple other goodies there as well. And this is at the bottom of your console. And a recording of this webinar will be emailed to you tomorrow. You can also access the on-demand version of this webinar to view anytime at landscapemanagement.net/webinars. Upcoming webinars from Landscape Management also will be posted to that page. With that, I want to thank you all for attending, and we hope you'll join us for another great webinar.